What if the person you think you are is just a mask? Not a mask you consciously chose, like an actor preparing for a role, but one you've worn for so long that you've forgotten there's a face underneath. Most people don't notice when they start drifting away from themselves. It doesn't happen all at once like a sudden cut. There's no clear moment where you can say, "It happened here. This was the moment I lost myself." It's more subtle. It's the quiet erosion of your own voice, replaced by the noise of everything outside. It's when you stop asking yourself what you truly want and start asking what will look right, what will be accepted, what will keep the peace. We live in an era where everyone is connected, yet almost no one is truly known. The modern self is curated, filtered, carefully presented, like a work of art made to be displayed. And in the midst of this endless performance, we forget that our soul was never meant to be on display. Carl Jung understood this long before the age of social media. He noticed that each of us develops a persona, a social mask we wear to navigate the expectations of the world. The persona isn't inherently bad, it's the bridge between our inner world and the outer world. Without it, living in society would be impossible. But Jung warned of the danger of mistaking that mask for the entirety of who we are. Because when that happens, the bridge becomes a prison. You can feel this prison even without knowing it exists. It's that strange exhaustion after a conversation where you smiled the whole time. It's the restlessness that creeps in at night, when the performance ends and you're left alone with someone you barely recognize, yourself. It's the quiet sense that life is passing by, but you're not really in it, just playing the part. We like to believe we are the authors of our own story, but the truth is that much of who we are was written by others, by our family's expectations, by the scripts of culture, by the invisible pressures of society. And the more we live by that script, the further our true self drifts away. It's not just about lying or pretending. Most of us aren't consciously deceiving anyone. It's about adaptation. We shape ourselves to fit. And in that process we often pay the highest price, our own truth. We trade raw authenticity for the safety of being accepted. But here's the paradox. The harder we chase acceptance, the more we risk losing exactly what we hope will be loved. And the love given to the mask never truly reaches the person behind it. In those quiet moments, when no one is watching, when there are no demands, a whisper returns. A whisper that asks, "Who am I without all of this?" Jung believed that daring to ask that question was already the beginning of genuine psychological growth. Because the danger isn't just losing touch with who we are. The danger is starting to believe there was never anything beyond what we show. The modern world offers identities like clothes in an endless wardrobe. We can reinvent ourselves in a matter of days, adopting new styles, new beliefs, new ways of speaking. But if every reinvention is just another layer of performance, rather than a dive into our essence, we are merely swapping masks, never truly removing them. And maybe that's why so many of us feel both visible and invisible at the same time. Visible to the world, invisible to ourselves. Perhaps you've felt it too, the unease in conversations that should feel light, the exhaustion after social interactions, that vague sense of participating in life without truly living it. This isn't always just introversion or fatigue. Sometimes, it's the soul signaling that the mask is too tight. So, before we dive deeper into Jung's concepts, the persona, the shadow, the self, I'll leave you with a simple thought. If you've been feeling lost, it may not be because you've strayed too far from your path. It may be because you've been following a path that was never yours. And the first step to finding yourself is noticing the mask you've been wearing. If this reflection made you pause for a moment, perhaps it's because a part of you needed to hear it. Subscribe to the Human Paradox to continue exploring the contradictions that make us human. Carl Jung believed that no one lives completely exposed to the world. I'm not talking about clothes, but something deeper. The way we present ourselves, the expressions we choose, the tone of voice, gestures, the ideas we share, and most importantly, the ones we hide. All of this forms the persona, the social mask we wear to exist among others. From childhood, we begin shaping this mask. We learn what pleases and what disappoints, what is acceptable and what will invite rejection. Our smiles, our silences, even our pauses adapt to fit the world around us. It's not something we do consciously, it's instinctive. It's social survival. For Jung, the persona is not the enemy. It's like clothing. It protects us, gives us form, allows us to move through different environments. Imagine living without any filter, saying everything you think, exposing every emotion, spilling your deepest fears and desires in front of anyone. It would be unbearable, both for you and for those around you. The persona gives us a code of conduct, a way to translate our complexity into something others can understand. The problem begins when we forget that the persona is a translation and start treating it as the original work. When the mask stops being a tool and becomes our identity. In the modern world, this confusion has become epidemic. Social media amplifies the persona to a nearly inescapable degree. We create versions of ourselves to fit on small screens. Funnier, more attractive, more confident, more interesting. It's not that these versions are false. Often they are true pieces of ourselves. But pieces, not the whole. And when we start living only in these carefully lit fragments, something quiet happens. The rest of us fades. Thoughts that don't match the narrative we show are pushed inward. Emotions that clash with what we project are suppressed. And so, the mask begins to merge with the face. Jung saw this as a serious risk to our psychological health. The more we identify with the persona, the further we drift from what he called the self, the essential core, the totality of who we are. It's like living forever in the foyer of your own house, never exploring the other rooms. The persona can also become an emotional prison. Think of someone who has always been seen as the strong one in the group. At first, this image is useful. It conveys confidence, leadership, stability. But over time, that person can begin to suffocate, unable to show weakness, fear, or insecurity, because it would threaten the character the world expects to see. And so, they live not as they are, but as they believe they must be. Perhaps this sounds familiar. Maybe you have one persona for work, another for family, another for friends. Each adjusted to the environment, each with subtle shifts in tone and expression. And while each carries pieces of you, none is the complete portrait. The danger is that by constantly switching masks, we can forget the original face. And when that happens, we are left with a strange emptiness, as if we are always performing, even when we are alone. Jung believed that the work of self-knowledge begins with awareness of this mask. Not to destroy it, after all, we need it, but to avoid being consumed by it. Knowing when we are wearing the persona and when we are living from the self is one of the first steps on the path of individuation. And perhaps it is here that we should ask ourselves, if all the masks fell away right now, if every role you play were suspended, what would remain? Carl Jung said that within every human being, there exists something far greater than what we show the world. He called this the self, not just the I, but the totality of the psyche, conscious and unconscious, light and shadow, everything we have been and everything we have yet to become. The self is like the soul's gravitational center. Everything orbits around it, even if our awareness doesn't perceive it. But there's a detail. Most of us live identified not with the self, but with the ego. The ego is the part of the mind that deals with immediate reality, our conscious identity, the part that says, "This is who I am." The ego is useful, necessary, but limited. It's like the surface of an ocean. It shows what's visible but hides vast, unknown depths. And it is in that ocean beyond the reach of the ego that the self resides. When we live only in the realm of the ego, we are confined to what we already know, to what we can control. And that limitation creates a void. Not because something is missing outside, but because we forget that our inner life is far greater than the small island of our conscious identity. The modern world reinforces this limitation. Everything is built to strengthen the ego. Resumes, online profiles, titles, labels, personal narratives. We are taught to define ourselves by our achievements, opinions, preferences, even the image we project. But the self cannot fit into a biography or a social media description. It is wild, unpredictable, and cannot be reduced to anything we can list. This disconnection between self and ego is one reason so many people feel that something is missing, even when, on paper, they have it all. You can have success, recognition, love, and still carry the sense that you are not living something essential. It's as if there's a background music you can barely hear, but somehow you know it's there. Jung called the process of reconnecting with the self-individuation. It's not about becoming a new person, but about gradually becoming who you've always been at the deepest level. It's about integrating what lies in the shadow, acknowledging internal contradictions, and allowing your outer life to reflect your inner life. But the ego doesn't like this process. It prefers certainty, labels, and fixed narratives. Exploring the self means diving into the unknown, and the unknown is frightening. That's why so often, even when we feel the call inward, we choose the comfort of the surface. Perhaps you felt this call. A vague desire to step away from the noise, to be alone, to better understand your own reactions and choices. That is the self knocking at the door, reminding you that there is a territory within you yet to be explored. The challenge is that to enter this territory, you need the courage to question your own identity. And ask, could it be that what I think I am is not all that I am? Among all of Carl Jung's ideas, Few are as uncomfortable and as necessary as the concept of the shadow. The shadow is everything you refuse to acknowledge in yourself. It's the thoughts, impulses, emotions, and traits you consider unacceptable, ugly, shameful, or dangerous. Anything that threatens the image you've built of who you believe you are gets pushed into darkness. That darkness, however, does not disappear. It does not dissolve simply because you decide to ignore it. On the contrary, the shadow lives, grows, and quietly influences your actions. The more you try to bury it, the more it finds indirect ways to manifest. Jung said the shadow is not a flaw, but an inevitable part of human nature. It's the other side of the coin, inseparable from the light. To ignore it is like pretending the night doesn't exist just because you love the day. What is repressed remains alive, simply outside the reach of your conscious awareness. And how is the shadow formed? From an early age, we learned that certain behaviors and feelings aren't good. Perhaps we were told that feeling anger was ugly, that crying was weakness, that questioning was disrespectful. Every time you suppressed something to be accepted, a piece of that energy was sent to the basement of your psyche. And over time, that basement fills up. In the modern world, we cultivate a dangerous habit, showcasing only our most polished versions while hiding any flaw that threatens the narrative. We want to appear strong, positive, balanced, as if living were a constant exercise in personal branding. But the shadow does not accept being forgotten. It emerges in outbursts of anger that seem unprovoked, in harsh judgments of others, which actually reveal aspects we refuse to accept in ourselves, in addictions, compulsions, and relationship patterns we cannot break. Jung warned that without confronting the shadow, we remain dangerously incomplete. Because it's not just the bad that gets sent into darkness. Often we also suppress talents, desires, and strengths that didn't fit the expectations placed on us. The shadow is not only the monster, it is also the forgotten potential. Integrating the shadow doesn't mean acting on destructive impulses. It means recognizing them, understanding them, and taking responsibility for them. It means having the courage to look at the parts of yourself you would rather deny, and still call them mine. In the process of individuation, Jung saw this encounter with the shadow as inevitable. There is no true authenticity without traversing this dark territory. And contrary to what we might think, this journey does not make us more dangerous, it makes us more human. Because the more aware we are of what we carry, the less we become prisoners of our own shadows. So perhaps the question is, which part of you is living in the darkness, waiting to be acknowledged? Never has it been easier to lose oneself than it is today. The modern world is a machine of distractions, designed to keep us busy with everything, except our own inner lives. We are always running, always consuming, always reacting, and rarely listening. Jung lived in a very different time, yet he already noticed the signs of a danger that has become commonplace today, the alienation from the self. When our attention is constantly hijacked by the outside, our connection to the inner world weakens. And without that connection, we begin to live from the outside in, driven by demands, trends, and the expectations of others. Contemporary culture values productivity over presence. It matters less who you are and more what you deliver, how many results you produce, how many followers you attract. In a world where everything is performance, there's little room for the pause that self-knowledge requires. Social media intensifies this distance. It not only reinforces the persona but keeps us trapped in constant comparison. You can wake up feeling good about yourself and in 5 minutes of scrolling feel inadequate. Every image, every other person's achievement, acts as a silent reminder that you could be more, and therefore are never enough. But the alienation from the self doesn't happen only in the digital universe. It's in the work that demands you be professional, even on days when you feel broken inside. It's in relationships where you feel you must mold yourself to avoid being abandoned. It's in the rush with which we numb ourselves to any discomfort, with food, shopping, shows, alcohol, notifications, so we don't have to face the void. That void, however, is not an enemy. It is the clearest signal that you are distant from yourself. Jung would say it is in this uncomfortable space that the self begins to call. And if we don't listen, life finds other ways to make us stop. Anxiety attacks, burnout, emotional collapse, existential questioning. The problem is that we've been trained to see these signs as failures, not invitations. We run to the doctor, switch jobs, move to a new city, start new relationships. But rarely do we look at the deeper cause, the fact that we are living far from ourselves. We live in an age where almost everything feels urgent, except what truly matters. And perhaps that is exactly why reconnecting with the self is an act of resistance. Because it requires moving against the current. It requires silence when everyone else is talking. It It requires slowness when everything is accelerating. And above all, it requires the courage to ask, if I weren't constantly being shaped by the world, who would I be? For Jung, the meaning of life is not in being accepted, but in being whole. And being whole is very different from being perfect. It means embracing both the light and the shadow, what is socially admirable and what feels uncomfortable even to ourselves. The journey back to the self, the process Jung called individuation, is neither linear nor comfortable. It doesn't happen in a weekend retreat, nor is it solved with a single insight. It's a constant movement of approach, loss, and reunion. And to begin, something simple but rare is needed: to stop and listen. Listening to oneself isn't just paying attention to your thoughts. It's noticing the patterns we repeat without realizing it. It's recognizing the choices we make out of fear rather than desire. It's acknowledging when we are living the life others expect of us, not the life that makes sense for us. Individuation requires moments of solitude. Not the bitter solitude of exclusion, but fertile solitude, where one's own presence becomes enough. It is there, in the silence, that the forgotten parts begin to emerge. Dreams, memories, sensations, ideas, everything once muffled by the persona starts to find a voice. But reconnecting with the self doesn't mean abandoning the world. It means returning to it in a different way. When we are closer to who we truly are, our relationships become more authentic, our work more aligned, our presence more genuine. We stop living like actors lost in someone else's script and start writing our own lines. Still, it's a path that never truly ends. The self is not a fixed destination. It is a dynamic center that calls us to integrate, to mature, to reinvent ourselves. And throughout life we will lose sight of it many times. The difference is that when we learn the way back, the loss stops being a collapse and becomes just another chapter in the journey. Perhaps the most liberating truth is this: you don't need to become someone. You already are. You just need to remember. And if, at any point, that memory begins to fade, return to the silence, return to your dreams, return to yourself. Because the self never leaves. It's we, distracted by the world, who forget where to look. If this video resonated with you, if part of you felt like you were hearing something that needed to be said for a long time, subscribe to the channel and leave a like to support us. It's crucial for us to continue producing videos like this. Here, we keep exploring the questions that make us human, and the contradictions that keep us alive.